Okay, so I believe this is the problem that we're looking at. I'm just going to use this example and kind of walk you through how I created these formulas. So I've got the chemist has three different acid solutions. The first solution contains 20% acid, second 30, and the third one contains 50%. So I'm going to assign these variables. I'm going to say that the first one is A, the second one is B, and the third one is C. So we're combining these three different acids together. And we want a total, we want all three solutions, a total of 120 liters. So I'm going to take some number of liters of A. I'm going to take some number of liters of B and some number of liters of C. And when I add them all together, I should have 120 liters total. So that's my quantity of the acid. This is, our A is 20% acid, B is 20% acid, and C is 50% acid, total of 120 liters. None of those deal right now, that equation doesn't deal with the percentages. So really, I guess I should say the solution A, solution B, solution C. Now we do need to deal with those percentages. So I'm going to move my camera a little bit here to get my more room. A is 20% acid. So 20% as a decimal is 0.20. So 20% of A, 20% times A, 20% of A is acid. 30%, oops, 30.30, excuse that. So 0.30 of B is acid, and 50% of C is acid. And if I combine all those together, I want the percent acid in the end to be 35% of the 120 liters. So this part right here is going to be 35% of 120. And reading this equation, it says 20% of some solution plus 30% of some solution plus 50% of some solution. We don't know how much of each of these there are. Should give me 35% of this end solution. Now I know that end solution is 120. So that number I can plug in here. I don't know A, B, and C yet. So 20% of something plus 30% of something plus 50% of something equals 35% of 120. And that, I'm hoping, is one of the more complicated parts. The next sentence, or next, I guess not even a sentence, half a sentence, says using 3 times as much of the 50% solution as a 30% solution. So whatever the 50% solution is, it's going to be 3 times this 30% solution. Now, I said the 50% solution was C, and the 30% solution was B. So that means that whatever I use, however much of C I use, however much of that 50% I use, it's going to be 3 times however much of that 30% I use. C I'm using 3 times as much of the 50%. So I'm using more of the 50%, which means 3 times whatever I used of this 30% solution will give me the 50% solution. It feels a little bit backwards sometimes with the language piece, because it almost looks like it says 3 times the 50, which would be 3 times C, but it's saying 3 times as much of this as this one. So we're using more of the 50% than the 30%. Now to use the matrix, to put it into a matrix, I'll do that right over here.